Welcome to the first ever Bourbon Lens YouTube Live. And today we are excited to talk a little bit about something that we have been working on over the last several months in partnership with Novio's Bistro, Bob Cutler. So most of you all know Bob by now. He has been a great friend, mentor, and just all around good friend to have for us. And me and Bob have had a lot of opportunities to get to know each other over the last several years, whether through text message, phone call, Instagram Live. If you want to go look that up, go check that out. It was 3 hours long. And it was a rough morning for us afterwards. And then this last November, 2022, Bob and I actually got to meet in person as he ventured down to Louisville, Kentucky to head about 45 minutes east to Frankfort. So we're going to be talking a little bit about this barrel pick that we did at Buffalo Trace for the Bistro. So Bob, thank you for hopping on and promoting this opportunity with us.
Absolutely. And I would encourage people not to go back and look at that Instagram Live. That was not my finest 3 hours of my life. I was good for about the first 45 minutes and then it went downhill quick.
It got rough when we started mixing alcohol, and then there was a mezcal drink that you sent me, and it was all downhill from there.
Yeah.
So, let's talk a little bit about just the setup for the event. You and your wife came down a day or so early to, get to Louisville. I think, was that your first time, right?
Yeah, I had never been to Louisville before, so that was great. And we wanted to kind of explore, Whiskey Row and see downtown and everything else. And what a great adventure. But it was, it was wonderful. It was like right before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. It was a good time.
Yeah, and so not only do me and Bob share our love for whiskey, we also have a few other similarities. Our first sons are born like a week apart from each other. Yep. We both are ex-college athletes, even though we were not very good at our respective sport. And we also have wives that actually let us play around with whiskey all the time.
Right. And your dog's name is Jack, and my son's name is Jack.
That is true.
So that's great.
Yeah, so we have a lot of similarities, and so when we got together, it was it was pretty simple. And I gave you all a foundation of restaurants and things to try, and I think you all went to Mayan Cafe when you first got down here, and then enjoyed Muscle and Burger Bar so much because it was right next to your hotel that we went back the morning of, and that's kind of where all this starts, right? Is that we met up at Muscle and Burger Bar and had burgers and some Buffalo Trace old fashions, if I recall correctly, on that morning to get a base. And I always say, and you'll see this in the article that we're publishing along with this live here, is that, man, it is important that every good whiskey story probably starts with food, because if not, it's going to be a rough morning the next morning.
Yeah. And we finished with food that was really good too. So, I mean, we had that was great. That was both ends. But,
food all day, every day is my goal. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the other thing that made that trip great was the fact that we didn't have to worry about anyone driving. We met up with Tim Tardy and his wife Alicia, and Tim arranged for that party bus to pick us up at the Burger and Muscle Bar, and that was, once we figured out how to handle the auxiliary cord on that and got some good music going, that was a great way to settle into that ride.
It did take a while, and your affinity for late 80s, early 90s music really shined on that bus ride to Frankfort.
It doesn't matter who you're with in anything. If they don't appreciate the 80s, 90s genre, you should just get out and get into another ride, because you're with the wrong people.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. There was at one point where I got my mom's debit card in college, and I maybe downloaded like the greatest one-hit wonders from the 90s, and it was a very expensive iTunes purchase.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of one-hit wonders in the 90s. But anywho, we arrived safely at Buffalo Trace, and one of the things I think a lot of people will find interesting as we talk through this was my first time to Buffalo Trace on a tour, on a barrel pick. I have gone to the gift shop previously because I was in Frankfort and just stopped in one time. But other than that, I've only been to the distillery once. And it was relatively easy, right? You go to the check-in counter, and then they usher you to the gift shop, where you look around and say, man, there's a lot of money I can spend in here. And you wait for your tour, and then you're ushered upstairs to get that part going. So, the first thing that I thought was amazing was we stopped by the spirits vault, and I felt like a little kid in a candy store. Like I wanted all of the liquor in that barricaded room. What about you?
That was new. I didn't realize that they keep a bottle from periodic runs for sampling, for going back and sampling. Like that to me, I didn't even, I mean, maybe that's just me being naive to that. But that is crazy how they have all these old, all the way back from the beginning of Buffalo Trace to now on what they're sampling, what they're tasting, to ensure that this bottle, well, maybe not this bottle, but the bottle of Weller behind me tastes the same as what's coming out, in 10 years from now. So I thought that was amazing. And it was interesting to see like how some of the labels have changed, just ever so slightly. And that was impressive. But I mean, you want to talk about an historical collection. That could have been a museum and 4 hours right there of just oohing and awing over all the different bottles and dates and everything else. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, for sure. Like I think the term I use in the article that accompanied this is oozes jealousy, because that's how I felt. I felt jealous of those whiskeys that aren't being consumed right then and there because I
wanted
wanted
to make it
to
look like
consume
they're
them.
in jail, and you kind of just want to break them out and free them. Like, you come, be free.
Yeah, be free. Yeah, I got a home for you. It'll be, you'll be treated well, I promise. So you leave there, and then you go to this like hall of just bourbon and whiskey titans, right? From Colonel Taylor to Pappy Van Winkle, all the way to Elmer T. Lee, and everyone in between that are master distillers at Heaven Hill or Heaven Hill. So on the brain at Buffalo Trace, or partnered with Buffalo Trace, like Pappy had as he moves on and Julian resurrects the brand. What was that like? Just to feel the nostalgia of all that, just to start the tour off. So we have this vault of old whiskey, and then, man, here's the story of how Buffalo Trace has really maintained its superiority in the marketplace.
Yeah. And I think Lee did a really good job of like walking you back into time almost, so you felt like you were progressing through the story with him. Lee being our tour guide in this, but he did a great job of explaining like the relationship here to here, and the relationship was money or time or resources or whatever brought Buffalo Trace to the next rung of the ladder as they progress through. And I thought it was really interesting, all the way back to, why it was called Buffalo Trace, and why, the people, how that right there was with the river coming through, and how that's where the buffalo came. And that's, the whole story and how it progressed through, kind of like open your eyes to more than just, you're chasing this bottle, you're chasing that bottle, you're looking for this, you're looking for that. It was very, very well done for that. I mean, the whole way through, but especially there, because when you start in the gift shop, it feels you start and end there. It feels very much like every ride you get off at Disney, right? You start and you end at the gift shop to get your picture. And it was, but he did a great job of bringing that back to, you're in an historical place, and it's, both as a monument and in what you're drinking and tasting.
Oh, for sure. And from there, it just picks up really quickly. You go through the normal distillery part of things. We did the Old Taylor tour, which I think it had a different name then. This is what it's called now, is the Old Taylor tour. And so you walk out the back and you walk into fermentation, and you just realize how much whiskey is actually being produced. We won't get into the part of like, what's the mash bill, what's the cooking temperature, all that. Who cares? For this purpose, it's about the single barrel, and we'll get there relatively quickly. But half of the fermentation tanks were shut down because they were having some type of maintenance thing going on.
Right.
And so, we paused and we looked, and it's crazy how that was before the new still came online, like how much whiskey fermentation was happening.
Yeah, 'cause they had it all blocked off, and behind it you could see everything else, and they're like, "Yeah, it's going to all be used. Everything is going to be full." And you're like, "Oh my god, this is just massive upon massive." So
It is, truly is. And Lee just kept us going, and we walked down the stairs and outside, and it was a balmy day, rather chilly actually. So we walk outside, and you see where the grains being has come out, and the spent grain leaves, and how they mash and mill the grains, and it's just so industrial. And like that was one of my favorite parts, because it felt like when you walked out that door and you went down that path towards where the grain spent and where the mashing of the grain was happening, you just felt like you were part of the bourbon process.
right.
Like it woke up the tour right then.
Yeah, and it's not only that, but I liked how he talked about. I'm a big fan of where that grain comes from, the farms, where those farms are, how many people are working at those farms. So you start doing the math on how many people and how many jobs and how many livelihoods and families are all affected by each bottle that they're doing. And it's not just the 500 or however many people are working at the distillery, but it's tenfold that when you think about the farmers and the truckers and everyone else that are all working hard to get the grain there just to start the process.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, completely agree. And then the tour only picks up from there, right? It goes into history like 300 right from there, right? We walk down this alleyway, and once you get to the alleyway, you start to see where, the first distillery or the second distillery was. As you can see the brick variation and things change. And Lee does a great job pointing all that out, and like where the tax man were sitting, like from, back in Prohibition and all of these pieces. Cause, old fire copper was one of the names of the Colonel Taylor's days. And so he walks you through all that experience, the different names. And then we walk into, I think it was called the necropolis of Buffalo Trace, and you go down in and you actually see where the first distillery was. And I just thought that was probably the most unique thing. It's like we unearthed something, and that's how they kind of put it. And now we're showing people how whiskey was made back in the 1800s, because it's completely different. And in 120 years, so much has changed from how do we ferment? What tools are we using? And they were using cement blocks to like ferment whiskey. Like that was the craziest thing to me.
Yeah, it felt like you were in Egypt and there was architects like digging through and you're discovering, something from yesteryear, world past. And you start, and again, Lee tells that story so well about every process they were doing. And the water, remember the watermarks for the river on every flood, it was marked out so you could see like what year the river basically was flooding that part of the distillery.
And it was crazy to see all that. And we don't want to bore you too much with the tour, but I felt like it was good to give you some context, because the tour kind of wraps up pretty quickly after that. We go to a barrel warehouse. That's pretty iconic, barrel warehouse H, where Blanton's is from. And we look through that and we talk about it, and we quickly get ushered to go meet Susanna, who does our barrel tasting and is the barrel curator for the entire single barrel program for Buffalo Trace. And we get in there, we're 4 barrels, and the first thing I realized, man, it's still cold, and this is going to be hard to drink whiskey. And so I actually get paired up with Tim and Alicia's friends from Nashville, who don't know much about whiskey at all. And so they're like, what do we do? How do we do it? And it was kind of funny. I'm like, get the glass, hold it in your hands like this, warm it up, breathe on it a little bit. And they're like, why? I'm like, you need to warm the whiskey up so it'll release some of the flavor so you can smell it, because you won't be able to smell or taste anything if you just drink it cold. Because the first sip I had, I didn't taste anything because I didn't warm the glass up myself. Yeah,
well, I'm going blank on her name. I remember after she had a few drinks, though, Delilah.
Yeah, Delilah.
I can't remember her real name, but Delilah is her drunk fun name. And Delilah came out in a big way after that sampling. But
It did.
yeah,
So
and they did a great job. You and I had talked about barrel picks that I've done in the past, and I feel like there's always she did such a great job of giving us a range of flavors within that portfolio. So all that mash bill, the same mash bill, but yet all four were very distinct. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think it was super interesting. So I remember pretty quickly, like I kind of go through the same process in my head. Every barrel pick I've done is nose everything through, jot some notes down, and then go back and taste. I don't want to just start tasting things and my palate's blown out. I want to get some good distinct flavor. So I just kind of followed the same thing I did, and I knew we would get down to 2, and then we'd probably do a blind, and that's how we'd pick. So I go through, and then I very vividly remember this. I get through pretty quick, and A and D ends up being my 2 favorites from the 4 that we had. But I knew D wasn't going to be one that everyone liked. Like it was going to be something that like just kind of struck a chord with me. And I knew C, I think, was the other barrel that we picked from to go into the blind with A, was going to be more of a crowd pleaser, would be something that everyone would enjoy. And I kick myself to this day for not keeping my tasting notes from that day. Did you keep yours?
I definitely did not keep mine. I definitely did not. I think I may have taken a picture. I should have gone back and looked. I think I took a picture of mine. I'm good about taking pictures of things if I know I'm going to lose it.
Yeah.
But I think I took a picture now that we're talking about it. I should have looked.
But. Yeah, and one of my favorite things before we get into like actually talking about and tasting the whiskey was we kind of get ushered around after everyone's tasted. We voted A and C are our 2 barrels, and we do it blind. And so we all leave, go into the barrel warehouse, and we come back. And I'm looking at Delilah and her husband, and I'm like, "This is A and this is C." And they're like, "There's no way." They just kind of chuckle and laugh. And I remember I'm like, "Bob, which one's which?" And you were like, "You had it reversed." And I was like, "Yeah, I think I got this one spot on." And I got so proud of myself that I like nailed it. And we end up picking A, which is what we have in front of us. And unfortunately, it's not the barrel proof that we tasted.
I had them reversed in my what I thought I was picking, but we all picked the same one.
Yeah.
For whatever that's worth. We picked the best one. Yeah, right. Because after we decided on it, that she let us try it right from the thief.
Yep.
And I think it was just you, me, and Tim were the only people who tried it from the thief.
And
it was, I thought it was maybe one of the top 3 whiskeys I had of 2022. Like it was so good. Like,
yeah. So. Yeah. And I think that's the thing that people don't realize. Like, if you're lucky enough to do a tour, you're probably going to get to try something at barrel strength because they're going to proof it down after the fact. And you can play around with it and proof it down. It's an inexact science while you're there because you don't really have all the water that they're going to use and so on and so forth. But, I think that was one of the highlights was tasting Buffalo Trace at barrel proof. So now it's been 5 months, 5-ish months since we tried the whiskey. So it arrived in Maine a couple weeks ago, and we kind of held it off to make sure we could get a really nice media blitz behind it. And so you've looked like you've already gone through a half a bottle, even though in some of the pictures you've sent me. So I know it's being enjoyed by some folks at the Speakeasy over the last couple of weeks, maybe. And now we're at the point where we need to tell people what they're buying in this. And so you sent me your tasting notes. I'm doing this blind. I've drank a glass, but I have not written tasting notes down. So I'm going to do this, off the cuff, and hopefully these match up to what I write a little bit later when I finish this off. But for me, I remember this one being bold in a citrus way. So that citrus note still kind of shines through, but there's some berry consistency, like almost jam-like notes. So like sugar and like, I want to say like raspberry, blueberry. My son's eating a ton of berries right now. So those are things that I'm like just getting a lot of. And then like a little bit of like burnt sugar from like a blowtorch that you do like to a creme brulee. So it's a really sweet nose, very inviting. And I just remember that was one of the things that I truly liked about it. What are you getting on the nose?
I had candied orange peel and vanilla cake frosting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that similar tasting ish notes.
Yeah.
It's almost got like confectionery sugar kind of thing going on to it. So you can get frosting or burnt caramelized, like you're going burnt orange, I'm going burnt sugars, right? So I think it's splitting hairs when it comes to that. And it's a super like sweet summertime type of nose that shines through there. And then on the palate, I think that's when it wakens up. Like I think it has characteristic, it's more bold, and a little bit spicier. I don't remember being as like bitey from a white pepper. It's not a black pepper. No. And it's, Buffalo Trace is going to be consistent. It's going to be a nice, easy mouthfeel. It's not like super complex. It's a little watery. I wouldn't say it's thin, but it like coats your palate from a water perspective. And then the flavors kind of show up front to back.
Yeah, I almost said it was like almost like an oil because it stayed through and it hit like all the way through the palate. So I almost described it as almost like more oily, which I think is similar to what you're saying. We're just, again, using different words, but. Yeah,
I mean, semantics. And I'm not good at the written language. So that means I'm probably not good at the spoken language either. But what I like about this is the mouth or the nose and the mouth match up.
Yeah.
A lot of times that doesn't happen. The only thing difference that I'm getting is that a little bit spice note that you don't get on the nose shines through, which makes it a really good cocktail whiskey, right? Like for you're like saying like, hey, how many neat pours can I sell? But how many cocktails can I make this out of? This has a balance of both where it's going to stand up as a neat pour. You don't need ice, don't need anything. You're ready to go. And you can have this as a session bourbon. I love session bourbons. A lot of people are like, what? I'm like, they make session beers for a reason. Like those are your dad beers, low carbs, less calories. You can drink 5 or 6 of them and you're cool. This is a session pour where you can have 3 or 4, you still feel fine. And, you don't feel bad about yourself. This is a nice session bourbon, but it's also, a great opportunity to make a cocktail.
It's just like, I call them summer wedding beers, where if you're outside at a party, you can drink it without making an ass of yourself.
Yeah. I mean, that's
getting a talking to from the wife the next morning.
Nobody needs that. And at your advanced age, you definitely don't need that.
No. She has to talk to me 2 days later. It takes me that long to recover now.
Yeah. Well, they make stuff for that to help avoid the hangover. Just you might want to look into it.
Water. Yeah.
Well, it's called water to alcohol content. So one of the things that we've done, and me and you've been talking about this for the last week or so, is creating a cocktail that goes along with this barrel pick that you could also use with any other barrel or Buffalo Trace, bottle. But for this one specifically, I'm calling it the main smash. It's not really a smash, but close enough.
It's more in line with a highball.
Yeah.
Which again, in Maine right now it's almost summer. It's 65 degrees, so it's, when I design cocktails, I often look to the weather to tell me what I'm drinking. So this was definitely one of those things. So I used 2 1/4 ounces of Buffalo Trace, 1/4 ounce of Liqueur 43, which is a Spanish vanilla liqueur. Has some notes of cinnamon come through in that as well. Freshly squeezed lemon juice, 1/4 ounce, and 1/4 ounce of honey syrup. So that's just a 1-to-1 syrup of honey to honey to water.
And so you can find this on the article that we talked about. You'll see pictures of what it looks like, and obviously you can see Bob working hard at shaking that cocktail mixer. And Bob is not a shaken person. Just so y'all know, this is way out of the ordinary for him. He's more of a stirrer.
Yeah, I'm usually a spirit forward, old fashioned Manhattan, something along those lines, cocktail. But this I just felt like needed something a little bit more refreshing.
Yeah.
And then
so you top it off with a little club soda, right?
Little club soda, and then we're gonna just roll it so you're not all getting club soda all the way at the top.
So with this, I don't have all the cool cocktail things that Bob has at his home bar. What are you getting from that enhances the liquid?
So the Liqueur 43 brings out a little bit more of the vanilla notes that are like secondary, third notes inside that. It has a little bit of cinnamon, which brings out some of those spice notes, the sweet to the spice. The lemon brings out the citrus, and the honey just acts as a sweetener, but honey kind of gives it a different sweeter than simple syrup.
Yeah.
Where it's more of a refined, deep flavor of sweetness versus a bright sweetness. Shake
nice.
it to get air through it, to get all the dilution, and then just top it with a club soda to lighten it and freshen it up. This cocktail could literally be crushed on any porch all summer long, at the beach, anywhere you can go. It's going to be. I'm a fan of highballs in the summer.
Yeah,
and this is a great one. Yeah.
Well, we'll change the name in the article to Maine Buffalo Trace Highball.
Perfect.
We got to put Maine in it. We just feel like it. We just have to do that. Or Maine Front Porch. We'll think about it. I'll put the old noodle on it before this article comes out. And so, we're really excited about this. This barrel will be available locally at Stompers for $26.99. Is there a bottle limit on this, or is it come as you get them?
I think he's going to put a case limit. So 1 case per visit, per person, per day.
There you go. So
I can't imagine there's going to be many left on day 2, but it should go quick. And then we'll have some at Novio's Bistro for old fashions and this cocktail and a few other great things that we're creating.
Yeah, you got to be able to keep this on tap for at least a couple months, right? So I'm sure Novios has got a few bottles sitting back.
Yeah, I think we have 48.
Okay, so maybe a month.
That may get us to a month.
You may get through Derby.
We'll have, it's May 6th, right? So we'll have something too, if you're thinking about an old fashioned with this, the persimmon bitter from Allen Whale comes through really well. Something a little brighter instead of like a cherry bitter, which is probably with some of the notes that you can bring out with adding a bitter. The persimmon bitter or an orange bitter would be a little bit nicer with this single barrel than a cherry bitter or Angostura or something like that. So. Nice.
Well, make sure you're stopping by Novio's Bistro, one of the hotbeds in Bangor, Maine for food and liqueur and liquor. Make sure you're checking them out if you are making summer plans, and book early because they are the #1 bistro in the Northeast, according to Open Table. Don't take my word for it. Take it from the people that actually are booking seats there. I've not been, so one day I will be. So Bob, someday soon. Anything else that you would like to share about the barrel pick that we did, just a few short months ago?
I'll tell you, Buffalo Trace was a great host for friends and family that we were there with. It was a great experience. Really excited about this pick. It was great to meet you and your wife. One of the best dinners that I've ever had at Magnolia.
Men's Catch 23. And then we went to 610 Magnolia the next night.
Yeah, 610 Magnolia was amazing. It was great food. in downtown Louisville. If you haven't been, go. If you are there, make sure you support all those restaurants and bars downtown. They deserve it. And
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, super appreciative of the opportunity to come and pick this barrel with you all, and it was great fun. Look out for the article that's going to detail everything we talked about today in written content with some pictures, so you can get a feel for everything that we got to experience while we were in Frankfurt. And make sure you're checking out Novio's Bistro if you're not already, or checking out Stompers, so that you can pick up one of these bottles that will be releasing April 18th, which is a Tuesday. So this goes live. This will be live on Monday, the 17th. Go pick up your bottle starting Tuesday, April 18th. That is tax day. I'm sorry. Just you can afford a bottle of liquor after that.
File, and then you probably need an inexpensive, great bottle to help you.
Yeah, exactly. You need an inexpensive bottle to help you. So $26.99, you'll still be able to afford that. It's cheaper than going to McDonald's for a family of four.
Or one.
Yeah, true.
one after a 3-hour Instagram live with Jake Llewellyn.
Yeah, well, that's probably right. Well, Bob, I truly appreciate it. Again, check out this barrel dropping tomorrow at Stompers, $26.99. If you are interested in learning more about Bourbon Lens, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Bourbon Lens. And you can find out more about Novio's Bistro at Novio's Bistro on Instagram, or just going over to the website to learn more. And until next time, cheers.
Cheers.